Good morning or good afternoon, everyone. My name is Paul. I'm the head of customer success here in the US. If we haven't met before, nice to meet you now. I'm joined by my colleague, Ed. He's our product delivery manager here at Pinpoint. For those of you who didn't join us at our first Spotlight webinar in September, you missed a lot, but we're glad you're here today. Every month, we'll host one of these sessions to walk you through what's new in Pinpoint. We'll share a few tips to help you get the most value from the product. And sometimes we'll even be able to give you a little sneak peek about what's coming soon in the coming weeks and months. We'll go ahead and dive in. I'm going to hand it over to Ed to walk us through the new features and everything he's got to share this month.
Wonderful. Thank you, Paul. And hello, folks. Lovely to have you all with us. I'm just going to get our screens organized. There we go. Perfect. Okay, so today, our biggest release this month has been our new reference checking tool, which we gave you a sneak peek of last time around for those who joined us before. But today I'm here to show you in a little bit more detail how it actually works and show some of the features that it has as well. Before we get straight into the platform itself, though, a couple of things about how we view the process and how it works in Pinpoint at a more holistic level. So when we say reference check, we're talking about, first of all, someone inside your team initiating a reference check with a candidate who's approaching the end of the recruitment process. That person is going to say initiate a reference check. And what that means is they're going to go to the candidate and ask them to provide the referee details if we don't already have them on file. The candidate can provide those back to us in a portal, in a sort of online form. Once we have those, we're going to confirm the details and make sure that the referees are suitable and that we've got all the right details we need. And then from that point, we're going to go out to those referees and get the requests, and importantly, keep asking for the requests in case people are dragging their heels and so on. And so that might be across one reference, it might be across multiple references, lots of different ones. Eventually, all those references are going to be returned. And when they are, your team are going to come in and review those references and make sure they've got the details that you need and everything's above board. Once they will be approved, or they might be rejected for certain reasons, but at some point they are either approved or rejected, and then the sort of process ends. So our tool is designed to support all of this. So what does it look like then? Let's jump over into the Pinpoint platform. So first of all, I have a job at the top of my favorite job list here, which is our Director of Customer Success role. And I'm going to jump into that job here and show off what this feature looks like. I'm going to go through how the feature works with everything set up, and then we'll go into how it's set up afterwards. So I've got some candidates that are in process here or in the offer stage, and I'm going to use these to show off various parts of the process for reference checking. So first of all, I've got a candidate at the top of the list here who is new in the offer stage, hasn't got any references set up yet. So we're going to go and get references process started for this candidate. So I will click on the candidate's name. Once this system has been switched on for your platform, there is a reference check tab that exists on the bottom left-hand side. And so I can click here. And this is where I'm going to go and initiate those checks from. So in this instance, I'm going to press the Request References button. In doing so, I'm going to be asked about some details about the referees and the candidates and what we want them to provide. Now, I've got a template set up for this already, so I'm going to show off how that looks first and use that to demonstrate, and then I say we'll come back to look at how we set templates up. But if I go into my reference request template list, I've got a couple of major templates here. I've got a standard one for our head office, and I've also got a slightly different one that has some different references and requests inside. We'll use the standard one for this particular candidate. What we're going to do here is pick out the details of what we asked the candidate for their instructions, but most importantly really is what references do we actually require from this candidate? And so in this instance, I want to get the last 2 places that this candidate's worked. I want to see the employment history and ask their employers a couple of questions. So I want that across the last 2 places they've worked. I might want that across more. Perhaps this candidate had a particularly short tenure at a few places, so there might be some more recent employers that I want to talk to. And so I can adjust the number of these references we want to have. This is currently using a template for a generic employment history that I've built in, but I can also have as many templates as I like. So I can have specific ones for specific types of references. But for now, this generic employment is going to work well. On top of that, I also want to get a university reference from this candidate, and just one of those because they need 1 degree. So I've got 1 university reference alongside the 2 employment history as well. So that's what I want to get from the referees when it comes time. On top of that, I can decide to have reminders configured. So once the candidate has provided us details, I can send out, of course, the request to the referees, but then I'm going to want to remind them automatically to submit their requests if they haven't already. And I can set up a bunch of these. So if I switch this on, automatically I have one set up to repeat the request after a couple of days. I can add up to 5 reminders and on various different amounts of days as I choose. Also, eventually, if none of these reminders actually work and no one ever answers, I can mark a referee as unattainable. And in doing so, then that's going to notify me that this referee wasn't responsive. And so I need to go out and perhaps set up a new request with someone different. So those settings all look fine to me for the time being. So I can choose next. It's going to give me a preview of what instructions we're going to give to the candidates and what details we want back as well. So I can preview those if I need to. And it's giving me a summary of the reminders and unattainable setting. After that, this is what the request email that goes out to the candidate is going to look like. And obviously I've templated one in our system here, but you can adjust the template as well. But also right now I can just freeform adjust this email. So if I want to add some more color to this email, I can do it here as well. So I can do all of that. And once that's done, I can request. And now against this candidate, you can see we have those 3 requests I asked, the 2 employment history and the 1 university request. And these are now in the status of sent to candidate. So we have sent these details onto the candidate to go fill in the details for us. What the candidate's going to see when that happens is, first of all, the email that comes into their inbox is going to link them out to this online portal. They will provide the details of their referees to us, and our instructions we templated are in here as well. And the specific things I want to ask them for are also in here. So here's our employment histories, and at the bottom, university reference. Once I've done that, once the candidate has done that, they will get a finalized view, which says, here's the details you submitted, and they can come back to this view and see updated statuses as the check process continues on your side of the system. But that's what the candidate sees. If we jump back into a candidate who has filled that form in and sent those details back to us, we can now see that I have names now against the referees, and I can see the referee details have been received. So the candidate has sent those back to us. My job now is to click into those and make sure that they are appropriate. And once they have, I'm going to send those on to the referees to start filling in. So if I look at the employment history one here, for example, I can see that they've provided me these details for the referee. All looks absolutely fine to me. I see an email address. I see the titles that I asked for. Perfect. And that's all fine. If the candidate had perhaps made a mistake or wants to query anything, we could get the candidate on the phone or message them somehow. You can edit the details they have provided. And if you do that, all of this is kept in an audit history. So it's never just a freeform edit. There's always lots of a trail behind the scenes, but we'll cover that as well in a minute. So those look fine. And on the assumption that all those references were actually fine, I can choose some or all of these, and then I can send these on to the referees. So I will do that. Again, you're going to see a preview of the email that goes out as a reference request, and it's going to explain how that process works. And I can also choose a reply to user. So if a referee didn't want to respond or had a reason they couldn't respond, they can reply back to the email, and we can pick out which user we want that to be in the system. So I would choose myself, for example, to make sure that any problems that come up in this process, I'm going to get an email straight to my inbox so I can go and find out what's happening and help move the process forward. But that looks absolutely fine again, so I can choose to send. That sends referees. Okay, and now all these reference requests have been sent on to the referees. So those are all good. What does the referee see? Similar to the candidate, they see that email that invites them to complete a reference. And then when they do, they will be taken to a portal that looks quite similar to the candidate. And they are going to see which candidate it is, the details they've provided, and then the questions I have decided I want to ask this particular institution. So, for example, we've got a couple of free text boxes around giving grades and narrative on their time at the institution. But also, I've got a place where they can upload a document because I want to see the university transcript for this applicant as well. So they can do that too. And you can have text, numbers, dates, URLs, documents, all manner of things you can ask. And you can define exactly what you want to ask the referees. So once they have filled those details in and then submitted them, those references will return. When they do, last candidate, we have got the return references here, and they are marked as reference received. From there, that may be enough. You may want to go through, have a quick look at them and make sure you're happy with the responses. And I can click into the response tab then and see what was said about this candidate. And I can go and have a look at any attachments that were uploaded as well. And I can also see, as I say, the audit history of this. So I can see what happened and when. So if anyone works in sort of high compliance settings, everything that happens in the system is fully auditable as well. So that all looks good. Last part of that process is to perhaps review and potentially flag things that we don't think require further look, certainly, or perhaps we want to reject a reference entirely because it wasn't appropriate, details weren't given correctly, and we need to take action based on that. So lastly, I can come in and choose to either do it here, or I can select a bunch of references and I can mark them as approved. So I've read them all, I'm happy they're good to go, and this candidate can now continue. I can mark them as review required, so I can mark them just for myself to note that we're going to need to talk about that as a team. Or I can actually reject individual ones entirely. So I can choose to reject a reference, and again, I can do that. And now it's going to flag that this reference was rejected. While all this is happening, there are notifications that will go out in the system. So if someone gets rejected, people with access to this job had notifications set up for it. We notified this has happened, and so people can know that it's time to take action on the user side. So that's a whip-it fast version of reference checking in the system and how it looks on a process level. On top of that, then, we talked about a few things there, so we shall unpick those as well. So templates for a start. In the system, I showed you that we asked for 2 employment history and 1 university reference. If I choose the university reference, the templates area of the platform is where I go and set these up. So I've picked out an academic type reference, and I call it my university reference. I'm asking for these fields as standard for an academic reference that we choose, but also I could ask for more things. So for example, right now in here, we don't actually ask what the candidate, what grade they achieved at university. We might have got that from their resume perhaps, but if not, I might want to have that as part of the standard fields that I ask the candidate when I'm asking them to find their referees to me. So we can add more fields there if we needed to. And then for the referee, we also looked at the university side and I asked people to upload a transcript. And these are the questions I've asked here. You can pick those questions from your system. You can build lots of default template questions so that adding them in for when you want to build out different types of references are very easy. So I could perhaps add another one of these very quickly by just picking another option, saving that. And then now this reference form has more things I'm asking. I can also reorder them so I can make sure that the experience for the referee is coherent and makes sense. And then this is where we can also set up that email that goes out to the referee, explaining that we're attempting to employ this person and want to get a reference from them. So you can default the emails and so on as well. So that is all good. So those are the individual references I asked for. But what I actually did at the start of that process was pick out a standard set of references I want for our head office in the company. And so those are built up of these reference templates that I've built for the system. So I can go to my reference requests and I say I've got a standard one and a leadership one. The standard one we used has got 2 employment history requirements and a generic university reference. Perhaps our leadership one then has both of those things and also a character reference for a leadership style conversation. And perhaps we can adjust the numbers here as well. So easy to template the system. And once the templates are set, they're ready to go. And the teams downstream can start using those without having to define every single time you want to run a reference, what they need to add in. So nice and simple there. And finally, the questions are at the end here. And so you can add lots of different types of questions. We have multiple choice, long text, documents, all kinds of things you might want to ask the referees. So lots of good stuff there. Okay, we talked about the team there quite a bit and about the team using the system. So how would that actually work in practice once you have this system configured for your platform? If we go into the user access side of Pinpoint for a minute, that's under the company heading, under user management. What I would actually want to do probably is give the ability to send out references to all my recruiters, for example, in the platform. And you could go through and give that to individual users if you really wanted to, pick them out of the system and go and get them that way. But for those of you who are using access groups, the quickest way to do this is you can adjust users' abilities across an entire range of people in an access group. For example, I have an access group called recruiters that lots of my users belong to. I can choose the recruiters group. I can go and check the permissions that group has. And if I scroll to the bottom now, there are 2 for reference checks. We've got the ability to view reference checks as they're in process and the ability to view, create and manage the reference check themselves. So that's something I would give to my recruiters to make sure they can use the referencing system correctly. For those people building out the templates, they would need access to the permission to build templates. And that's at the top of the list here as well. So that's more reserved for the sort of administrative side of the people who work in that side. Okay, that's user access. But on top of that, I mentioned notifications, and there's lots of different notifications available around this system, around approvals and rejections, notifying people when references have returned or when the candidates complete their referee form. And so we have the same options across notifications. So right now I would also want to template that to a particular user group. And so I can choose our recruiters once again. And this time I would go over to their notifications tab. And if I scroll down a little bit, we have a set of notifications specifically for reference checks. So as I say, referee details have been received, a new review is required or a review has happened and has been approved. All the things you would probably want to know about reference checks as the process is continuing across lots of different candidates. I've shown you all of this so far in the recruitment side of Pinpoint, the applicant tracking system side. This system also exists in our onboarding platform too. So for those who use our onboarding system, you can use references as a step type. So if I create a new step here, we have one for team members called reference check actions, which allows us to set up review moments where we actually invite people out from outside of the system, perhaps users who aren't necessarily Pinpoint users, to come in, review the details of references and do their side of the approval as well. So we can use reference checks in onboarding too. And lastly, because some of the process that I've shown you is some manual things, so we have to click some boxes and ask references to happen. There are always ways we can improve the speed of things, and obviously we have a big automation system, which I'm going to show you a little bit of in a minute. But we also have something called stage actions, which allows you to define the sort of start of the process for a candidate could be automated. And for example, in this job here, I have a stage called reference checks. And what I want to happen is, via a stage action, anytime a candidate goes into that reference check stage, I want them to be sent the candidate referee form to start the process automatically without waiting for me and my team to go in and manually ask the candidate to provide their references. And to do that, then we can edit the stages that exist on this job. And we can find the reference check stage I've got in there. It's just a review stage. I can pick out stage actions, and then I can choose to send a reference request. And if I do that, it's going to ask me which template I want to use. So let's say our standard one, and which email template I want to use. And I have an email around reference requests there. So that means, as I say, once that's configured, I can add that action, set that up as done. And now anytime a candidate is moved to that reference check stage, they're automatically going to be invited to give their referee details using our standard template. So another way to automate things, to speed up the process, just to make sure that everything's more streamlined for you and your team. Okay, that's the vast majority of reference checking. If you'd like to do that, you need to speak to your customer success manager. Hopefully lots of you will know who that person is. If for any reason you don't, please do use our support system to find out. So on the bottom left-hand side of Pinpoint, we have our chat icon. You can use this to come into the messages tab, and you can ask our team to connect you to your CSM. So you can ask a question and go and do that. The team in here are super responsive. For anyone who's not already had the experience of talking with them, they're lovely human beings, and they work in all UK and US business hours across all the coasts. So super responsive. Usually within 2 minutes, they can get you a response of some kind. So they will absolutely be able to help guide you towards your customer success manager to get the system switched on and tested if you would like. Okay, that was a whistle stop of reference checking. A couple more things to show you then. So we have a couple more small but mighty things. We do lots of these. We add these to the platform incrementally all the time. There's a couple that I thought we'd just show you as part of this process as well. So for anyone using our onboarding system, there's a very small upgrade. But if you're looking at a candidate view in the past, if you click on a candidate's name, you can see the details around their onboarding, but not necessarily all the things about their application, which can be difficult when you want to know things about, say, offers and documents. So we've added a couple more tabs in, offers, first of all, so I can come down now and see the offers that were made to this candidate. So I can use that information as I will in the onboarding process, and also documents as well. So across the various applications this candidate has made, I can see all the documents they've submitted. If I click to this customer success manager job, for example, I can see a few documents that the candidate sent there, and I can click through and view those documents as well. So small, but very useful for anyone who uses the onboarding tool. On the recruitment side, we have also added the ability to collect a preferred name at the application process. Oftentimes, candidates will submit their sort of formal name, and so they can choose their preferred name. To do that, if you want to, when you click on the new job button in Pinpoint or edit an existing job, if you go to the application form section, you'll now see a preferred name option. This field is optional, but with this switched on, this question about preferred name will now appear in the application form. Okay, so that's references and our small but mighty things out of the way. Now, we've got a few minutes left, and what we also want to do in these webinars is not just show you the new things that we have, but also some of the tools that we have in the platform that you might not have seen yet. And to that end, today we also want to show you a few things around our automation tool, which we launched earlier this year. It's designed to be incredibly flexible no matter how complex your hiring is. We've rebuilt it so you can create connected workflows that you can manage from a single place. You can automate required steps for your team around approvals and escalations so that processes stay consistent and they are auditable. And so that you can set up personalized messages and automatic follow-ups so your team can focus on people rather than the administration around the people. All very useful. So I'm going to show you quickly how that system works, and we'll go into some details on the sort of the things, the power, the capability of the system. So over in our automation section, we have a manage automations page, which I'm in. And I'm going to show you how easy it is to create a really basic automation that's incredibly powerful first and foremost. So when you're launching a new automation, I choose a new automation button, and you can start by defining what you want to kick off the automation process. But actually, that's all new. If you've not used the system before, that may not mean a whole lot. What actually you might want to do is start with some of our templates to give you some inspiration about how you might use the system. So if you click the Browse Templates button at the bottom, you'll be taken over to our template library, of which we have lots of really useful ones. The one I'm going to pick out to show you really quickly is our rejection system. And in this one, we're going to reject applications based on the response they give you to an application question. In this instance, we're going to use one around the right to work, and we're going to reject applications where the candidate doesn't have the right to work and we can't sponsor them for any reason. So on the right-hand side here, I have reject applications based on application responses. That's the one I'm going to use, so I can choose to view the template. Our automation system is built up as three key components. We have triggers, which define what starts the workflow running. Then we have conditions, and these are things we want to check and validate. And then once we have done that, we can take actions, and there are many and various actions we can take. But in this case, I'm going to have a system whereby when an application is created, we're going to look for the responses a candidate gave, particularly to a question around the right to work. And then based on how they answer that question, they're going to maybe be rejected if they answer that they don't have the right to work in the territory where the job is located. Super simple, but very powerful automation, because particularly if you work in high volume recruitment, that's going to be potentially lots of applications removed who just wouldn't be worth the time screening on. So I can choose to use this template. If I do that, I can see I've got my trigger, my condition, and my action here. The trigger is good. When an application is created, this workflow is going to run. And then the last two are offering an option to finish configuring. And the reason for that is we need to go and define what question we want to filter on. And then we're going to define some things around the rejection and how that looks and feels. So I will choose the finish configuring button on the filter. And what we're defining here is which question in the system we want to check. So I'm going to choose the property we're looking for, and that's an answer to a question. We have a question templated across our jobs, which is, do you have the right to live and work in the country in which the job is based? And it's a yes, no type question for now. So I'm going to pick that one out of the system and choose this is the question we want to look at. And then I want to find all the candidates that said they don't have that right. So we're going to choose the option equals no. And I can save that. And finally then, so for all those candidates that we are going to have to reject, I want to define how we reject them. So I can choose to finish configuring the last step. And in this case, we're going to reject them using an email. So first of all, they'll be removed to the rejected stage of the hiring workflow. And then I want to send them a rejection email. And I can write one free form here, but again, I've got a template in the system for this. So I have a standard early rejection with no feedback because these candidates have not met us. We don't need to give them too much information at this point. So we're just going to use the standard early rejection here. I can preview that email and make sure that it's appropriate, and that all looks fine to me. So I'm going to close that. And then as a little useful part of this system, lots of power in this, we also have the option to do this at a certain time of day or with after a certain delay. And I think it's reasonable to expect that if a candidate applied, we checked the right to work question, immediately rejected them 10 seconds later, they're probably not going to say very nice things about your company on Glassdoor. So what we'd probably want to do here is add a small delay to the email going out. So I can choose to set this happen after a delay, a set amount of time, and in this case, I might make it a few hours perhaps, or a number of days, depending on how you feel. I can also define that those emails should go out in business hours, where the candidate's in the candidate's time zone, and I can choose Monday to Friday as well. And I will define that as my current time zone. There we go. Okay, that's it. So that is set up. I can choose to review and publish that. So you can ask me to just double check a couple of details, which will look fine. We can publish that automation. And now that automation is live across all the jobs in my platform. And that is, you can see, very powerful automation launched in the space of, what are we on, 2.5 minutes, perhaps at most. So a super powerful system. Now, that's quite a straightforward one where we're looking at applications, let's say a very simple single application response, but the system obviously has significant amounts of power beyond that too. So in terms of other ones we might look at, another simple one from our basic automation system that is available to everybody, you can tag people based on the answers they give. For example, when I have a candidate that's applied, we might ask a question on whether they need reasonable adjustments to continue in the application process. And if they do, I want to actually find those candidates and tag them so that my recruiters can see that there's a candidate that needs adjustments and that it's really super obvious to my team that there's something needs to happen here. And so in this case, almost identical to before, we have a trigger where the application is created that kicks the workflow off. We can check conditions. And once we check the conditions, which is the answer to the question, we can tag the candidate with requires attention tag. So those are the basic ones, and that's available in our basic system. But with our advanced automation system, we have infinitely more amounts of triggers, conditions, and actions. And this is really limited only really by the things you would like to be able to do in the system. Your sort of imagination can do pretty much everything with this. Okay, we looked at reasonable adjustments there. But if you want to do a more thorough version of that with our advanced automation, you can also move candidates around stages and do other things. So in this case, I've got an advanced version of this. I've got an application created triggering the workflow. I'm going to check for the answer to the reasonable adjustments question. And then I'm going to move them to a separate stage called reasonable adjustments, so they are really obvious in the process. And then I'm also going to create a task for our recruiter to go and reach out to that candidate and find out exactly what the adjustments need to be. And then also make sure they've done any work required to make those adjustments so that when it comes time to interview this candidate, they're all ready and we're all set on our side. That's one of the advanced ones. But also you can use in advanced automation branching logic. And so rather than having to find a yes-no pattern for questions, I can see something that happened and then do things on multiple different branches. So for example, here, I might want to handle applications after a job has been filled. So I've got a candidate that's been hired and I want to close the job down, but I can have that happen automatically. And so I can choose to have a trigger where the job is filled. I can then branch out and say, for any candidates that were in an applied stage, they can be rejected by email because we haven't met them yet. They can have a simple rejection. And we have a review stage candidates who we've met. So I might want to send a more detailed email. And then for the candidates that were in our offer stage, our runners up, I actually don't want to reject anybody by email. I want to have a task for a recruiter to reject them. And I'll put that task straight into the recruiter's inbox. And then I also want to tag those candidates as silver medalists so that when I'm coming back to look for a similar role in the future, I can search our candidate CRM by the silver medalist to find out who was really great last time round and whether they might still be available. So again, huge amounts of power, and you can keep adding more conditions, more branches as you needed to as well. This one came directly from a customer of ours. They had an issue where they would work in high volume recruitment. If they leave jobs open for too long, they spend too much money on programmatic advertising. And also they might go away for a weekend and they know they'll find the candidate they need in the first 500 responses to the job. But actually, if they leave this job open over the weekend, they might come back on Monday morning and find they have 2,500 responses. And also they spend lots of money on advertising over the weekend they didn't need to, because they are sure within the first 500 applications they get, they're going to actually find the candidate they want. So we have an automation that checks every time an application is created, whether we've hit 500 candidates in that particular job. And if we have, we close the job. Super, super simple to set up, 30 seconds to build that, but that is saving them money every day and huge amounts of time in the amount of people they're screening. I can see Paul reappearing, and I appreciate we're very close to time. So last thing to say on this, we have a document that shows you all the things you can do with this and some of the templates we have in the system. I think a button might be appearing in a minute. You should go and be linked to that. But yeah, do go and have a look at that if you need to as well. Paul, you jumped in to tell me we're at time, I assume.
Great. It's like the Oscars music, except it's just me showing up. So great work, man.
I've got one more very quick thing to say just on this one. This is a system as it currently exists. We do keep adding to our automation system. We've just launched the ability to send SMS via the system. So if you have our Twilio integration set up, you can actually do SMS to candidates. You can either do marketing type SMS or application specific SMS. And if it's the marketing one, you have to have consent from the candidate, which you can get through our system. But there we go. Spot on time. Those are all the things.
Ed, you're incredible. Thank you, everybody, for joining us. We'll do this again next month. You did ask a question and we didn't get back to you. I promise a CSM will be in touch shortly. If you want to shortcut that, Ed certainly showed you through support how to reach out to us and how to get your CSM's information. You probably already know it, but appreciate everybody joining us. We will wrap it here. So thanks for joining us, and we'll be in touch.
Cheers. See you soon.